everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're really happy to have Carrie and Dorota here from the Office of the Indiana State Chemist. They are in the laboratory there, quality assurance, and have been working closely with all of the laboratories who have are trying to either get certified or trying to work with hemp testing. And they've been fielding a lot of questions, as have we. And so we thought this would be a good opportunity for us to gather and let them share some of their magic with us. So thanks again. And with that, Carrie, I'm just going to let you take over.
All right, great. Thank you, Jamie. As you mentioned, I'm Carrie Leach. I'm with the Quality Assurance Director with the Office of Indiana State Chemist. I've been there for about 7 years, and prior to that, my experience has come from the pharmaceutical industry. So, you know, when I started, hemp wasn't a thing, but certainly some of that experience has really helped me out as hemp has come on board. So we're hoping to make this kind of interactive and, you know, go through the questions and kind of give some space and time for those individuals who would like to ask questions throughout the presentation. Please feel free to do so. As Jimmy mentioned, if you want to put them in the chat, and then they'll go ahead and read them to us so we can answer your questions. But we've been asked a lot of questions. We've been setting up a lot of meetings with individuals, so we just thought this would be a great way to kind of communicate a little more effectively. And certainly after this, if anybody else has additional questions or would like to set up a meeting with us, we can absolutely accommodate that. I'm going to be speaking first, and then Dr. Dorota Enerowitz will be speaking. She's our hemp lab supervisor, and she'll go into kind of the nuts and details. So we're both on, so we can kind of, you know, tag team this for the technical side and for some of the other regulatory side. So first of all, I kind of like to know too, who is attending. If you would consider putting your name and affiliation in the chat, just so we have an idea of who's out there and who we're talking to, we would appreciate that, you know, sometimes. And if, you know, don't feel free not to be shy, go ahead, turn your camera on so we can see you. We like to see people's faces too, if you want to. But yeah, if you could just put your name and affiliation in the chat, and then we can check it out later and see who we're talking to. So first off, I know that probably just, you know, because we didn't know the cross section of the audience that we would really be speaking with and levels of where you are with this process. We've spoken with labs who are starting ground up and really don't have any idea, you know, what has the effort that's gone into hemp in the past 4 or 5 years to those laboratories who are a lot more experienced. But I just wanted to kind of get a baseline by providing the Farm Bill definition of what hemp is. And so you can kind of see it's the plant, the species, any part of the plant containing the seeds thereof, derivative extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, salts, acids, salts, and salts of the isomers, whether growing or not, with a delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, sorry, concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. So that we'll be hitting some of these functions or parts of the definition as we move through the presentation as well. Just sort of a little bit of background, the Office of Indiana State Chemist is located on Purdue University. We are all Purdue employees technically, and the office has been there since 1881 in the biochem building, and it has always been associated with the university. In 2014, 2015, we started the Hemp Pilot program and started working with agronomy, testing THC on the university plots. There you can see a picture of me. I think that was the first year, you know, it was 2014 that it started, but 2015 was our first sampling year where OISC was doing some of the testing, finding the THC potency testing. So of course we were all excited, and someone took a picture of me standing next to that plant. For reference, I'm 5'8", so that's how tall that plant was that year. And OISC was given the regulatory authority for hemp and became the state lab to test all hemp in Indiana for % THC potency testing. And then 2018, OISC became registered with the DEA for Schedule 1 controlled substances. So we hold a registration for Schedule 1. And under the research years, OISC inspection staff, we have a staff of people who, and our inspection staff are also there. They just don't do hemp, they do feed, seed, fertilizer as well, you know, depending on the season and the time frame. So they are multi-purpose inspection staff, and they're the ones who go out and sample the official samples and bring them into Dorota's lab for testing. And I said the research years because things are going to change a little bit. Before, you know, growers needed to have a research plan. in order to grow hemp in Indiana, but in 2021, since our state plan was approved, we'll be doing moving to commercial years, and it's going to look a little different, I would imagine. And we're going to kind of step through some of what that may look like, or what we're hoping it will look like. And here, for anybody who may have missed it, I've included the link for USDA news release that approved our hemp plan, the Indiana hemp plan. So if there aren't any questions on all of that, it was all sort of background information. I'll move into cooperating laboratories with the Office of Indiana State Chemist and what we're hoping to build for this mutually beneficial relationship that we could have. And so I wanted to take the emergency rule, section 50 outlines pretty much exactly kind of what we're looking for. And a lot of these, you know, topics will remain the same as we move into 2021. We probably won't be changing too much of it. So we want to, you know, increase our capacity in making determinations of analytical compliance with the federal and state hemp laws. And so our state seed commissioner, and also we've, you know, with all the change happening all at once with the Indiana hemp plan getting approved, we also have a new state seed commissioner. If you haven't had the opportunity to see the press release on that, Dr. Mark LeBlanc from Louisiana is filling Dr. Waltz's shoes. He retired in May. We've been kind of searching since May and finally found somebody who accepted the position. So Dr. Mark LeBlanc is our new state seed chemist, or state chemist and seed commissioner for the office and for Indiana. And you know, he wants to make determinations on trying to find the willfully participating laboratories to conduct analysis on hemp for total THC and other things as well, cannabinoids, nutritive evaluations, determinations, nitrogen, disease. And, you know, we'll kind of talk about that also as we move on and why that's important and why it's particularly important to OISC. So in section 50, it breaks down into 11 different components of what we're looking at for cooperating hemp laboratories. And number one is labs need to own or possess under their control on their premises analytical instrumentation capable of accurately analyzing decarboxylated THC or total THC, which is THC and THCA at a 0.3% dry weight basis. And I've put the emergency rule in its entirety in black, so you can see what it is, what the rule says, and then in red are OISC's determination of what that may mean and what it is we're going to be looking for laboratories to have. So, you know, own or possess under the control, that analytical instrumentation, what we're talking about there is either gas chromatography or HPLC or UPLC. It doesn't need to be both, it's one or the other, but what it doesn't mean right now are those handheld devices, the handheld HPLC type devices or the in-field devices. Right now, we're looking for laboratories who have gas chromatography, HPLC or UPLC within their laboratory. The analytical testing equipment must operate under written procedures for calibrating, maintenance, and record retention. So some of the items that you'll need to have in order to run these samples are a validated method for testing, and then SOPs on other procedures describing your retention of records, how long you keep them, what they are, and records include, but aren't limited to, those reports generated from instruments or as a result of instrument data, and also vendor maintenance and calibration records. So all of the things that go into maintaining your instrumentation need to be kept and for a time frame defined by the laboratory, and then of course documented in an SOP. Section 2 of the emergency rule, a section under this section, a laboratory must be certified by a nationally recognized standard, such as ISO 17025, and the ISO is on the 17025 is on the 2017 standard, or similar standard approved by the state seed commissioner. So not being ISO 17025 2017 accredited does not mean the laboratory will not be considered as an OISC cooperating lab. So those laboratories that follow other types of accreditations are being, you know, considered NELAC and other things. Even laboratories who may not be accredited by a third-party accrediting body could be considered for cooperating labs, so long as they can prove they have similar quality management systems and laboratory systems, standards that are being followed that comply with those types of standards. Laboratory must apply and receive a Schedule I registration from the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. So this is a requirement. So we may consider other accrediting bodies or accrediting certifications, but a laboratory must have their Schedule I DEA registration to become a cooperating hemp laboratory. And in 2021, when laboratories go to license their, ask or get a license to be a handler, the DEA registration number will be a requirement when applying, and won't let you go any further if that DEA registration hasn't been obtained. And because it is a requirement, I wanted to talk a little bit about what it takes to get that DEA registration. In Indiana, I don't know if there are other laboratories on the call that aren't within Indiana, but in Indiana, it starts with the Indiana Pharmacy Board, and you need to fill out an application for a non-practitioner controlled substance. And the Indiana Pharmacy Board, at least pre-COVID, was a paper process. So I've included the link here on how you can get to the Indiana Pharmacy Board and start requesting that process and filling out that paperwork. They meet, I think, at least, again, pre-COVID, it was, I think, once or twice a month, the Pharmacy Board, to make determinations on those registrations and certifications that they'll be handling. So it's not a very quick process by any means. And once they make those determinations, they'll send an inspector to do an inspection of your facility. If the facility passes the Pharmacy Board inspection, then the laboratory will be issued a license with the state of Indiana, in which case you can take that license with Indiana and start your application for registration with DEA. DEA, luckily, is an online application process, and I've included the link on where to go to start that process as well. And they will send at least one diversion investigator, possibly two, to do an audit of your facility and sit down with you and go through the CFRs and make sure that everybody's on the same page before issuing your DEA registration. Some of the things that the DEA registration covers and is very similar to the Pharmacy Board, they're kind of looking at both the same thing, is storage. Most importantly, one of the most important is they need to know how you're going to keep it stored. Lock storage is important, but double locking is also important. So if you lock your samples with keys, such as we have a freezer that has a combination key, but we also have a safe where we keep certain items. And the safe takes a key, so we lock our keys to the safe. And if we have combinations written down, we don't, but if we were to write those combinations down, if we couldn't, say somebody's really forgetful, we would then store all of that information locked away. So we have double security, plus we have the room is only admitted to certain individuals, have the ability for card swiping into the room. So they want double storage, double locking. We kind of have triple if you count the room part of it, and then just keep everything locked up, obviously. And then documentation is also a huge thing with DEA and controlled substances. And some of the things that you'll need to have documented are all your authorized users who will have to submit to a background check. So anybody who may be touching your controlled substances, weighing, analyzing, or has some authority over removing and then taking sample out should be submitted as an authorized user. And then you'll want to have the background checks and just a list of those individuals for if in the future, because DEA audits, and usually it's annually. We haven't had to have another audit since we got ours in 2018. And honestly, I think COVID-19 has a lot to do with that. DEA Form 222, this form is given to the laboratory by DEA for purchasing. So if you were to be moving samples between laboratories, you would need to have the 222 form if you want to accept samples. So for example, and it's not just, for testing facilities, it's for testing purposes. So if someone were to send to your laboratory something that is marijuana, you would have to fill out the DEA Form 222 in order to accept it. And as an example, we work with the Indiana State Police Laboratory, and sometimes they take some of our samples to do their own analytical work on, in which case they fill out the form 222 and give us a carbon copy, and then they're able to take our samples. So it's just a record, a chain of custody of where those samples are at any times. And then of course your inventory, you'll need to make sure you have everything accounted for, weights, percent THC, names, uniquely identified sample numbers and things of that nature, and where they're kept. And it can, you know, there hasn't been, so far, there hasn't been anybody saying this is the way you have to do it. It can be paper, it can be through some other system that you have, if you have software that can handle it. Temperature monitoring on your fridges and your freezers. You'll need to know if it's compliant, not compliant, what's going on with the temperature. Disposal, of course, of all of your samples. And you'll need to fill out DEA Form 41 for disposal of samples. Whenever you get rid of them, it's kind of you send off the Form 41. If we were told if you don't hear from us, it's a good thing, or if they need to contact you and let you know not to dispose, then they'll do that within 2 weeks usually. And then you'll have to document theft or significant loss, and always notify DEA upon discovery. And then, of course, there's DEA Form 106 that needs to be filled out with theft or significant loss. And we have stated in our own procedures that if somebody accidentally knocks over a sample and we have significant loss because we spilled it, we'll just document that on our inventory. We wouldn't fill out a Form 106 and notify DEA that somebody spilled a sample. It's just if something goes missing, you'll need to notify. And I've been through the regs a few times. I have not found where they define what significant loss is. So you'll need to determine significant loss for your laboratory on when you need to notify DEA. A diversion officer might have something else to say about that. So far, we've been okay in terms of our compliance by, you know, telling DEA this is how we're going to handle it. Any questions on the DEA registration portion? Because we will jump back into the emergency rule. So all training records of personnel establishing competencies for hemp analyses must be retained and made available for review by the state seed commissioner or his/her representative. His/her representative would probably be either myself or Dorota, wanting to see those records of personnel to see if they are competent to run hemp analyses. The state seed commissioner may post on the OISC website a list of laboratories licensed to conduct analyses for hemp. And this is actually something that we are trying to do, is we have at least one approved laboratory right now on our website. And this page is the hemp page that you see here, and you see the red arrow in the, you know, in the gold bar. If you navigate to hemp, it's the last one. Then in the gray bar, you see cooperative laboratories. If you were to click on that, you would see the list of where all those cooperative laboratories will be. And then I've also included the link so you can go straight to the site if you'd like to check it out. And a laboratory, of course, must comply with all other federal or local laws, including a determination if the laboratory requires DEA administration, DEA Schedule 1 registration, which of course we've already said the laboratory must have a DEA Schedule 1, and the document shall be required as part of the application process. We've kind of mentioned that as well too. And then of course, laboratory is accepting out of state hemp for analysis prior to the state seed commissioner approving the cooperating laboratory. A DEA Schedule 1 is required. Laboratory licensed under this section must demonstrate to the satisfaction of the state seed commissioner a strict adherence to chain of custody and record keeping best practices. And chain of custody includes everything from where the sample originated, who collected it, variety, and all applicable dates before coming to the laboratory. And then, of course, once the sample is received into the laboratory, a determination on whether the sample is appropriate for analysis needs to be made and documented. And then, of course, while in the lab, samples must be kept secure. And we do lock our hemp samples when we receive. We have habit to lock all of our samples within the Office of Indiana State Chemist, but you know, even if we get these samples in and we haven't made a determination yet on whether they're hemp or whether they're marijuana, we want to keep them locked up and safe. A laboratory manager must agree to submit to the laboratory an audit by OISC personnel to confirm their ability to comply with Indiana law and be evaluated to remain in good standing. 2021, again, it'll technically be our first commercial year, and we've only had one laboratory that we have approved. We have not yet, Dorota and I have not yet worked out an audit schedule and what it's going to look like for 2021, and whether COVID-19, of course, will be a big factor of that. Right now, when to start the process, we do virtual meetings and we have a questionnaire that we send out, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And that's how we start the process. But at some point, Dorota and I will want to make a visit to laboratories and look at records and make some determinations on whether or not everything is being complied with Indiana law and the Office of Indiana State Chemist. And it could range from annually to every other year, sort of depending on how we set up our schedule. But right now, annual audit is, kind of the holdover for every agency. But I can see it being every other year when we kind of get rolling in the commercial laboratory, and laboratories are in good standing. You may not see us every year, but at some point we will need to come and visit and do an audit of your facility as well. So a laboratory manager must notify the state seed commissioner of any non-compliant calibrations, performance qualifications, or any other adverse actions that may affect the data or data quality. And Dorota and I have we've been talking quite a bit about this one and how we are wanting to handle this. And as part of this discussion, certainly any information from you guys would be beneficial. How would you like to provide this information to us? We're looking for any calibration failures, CAPAs, deviations from procedure, or nonconformances where data are affected. They must be communicated to OISC, particularly if samples are sent or a C of A is sent and test results are sent, and then it was discovered that those test results were adversely affected in some manner. What we don't need to see are those types of instances where a problem is found and then investigation into the laboratory happened, and root cause was found and a correction was made, and then everything went fine after that. But anything where data were adversely affected and can potentially be submitted to a grower or to the public in some way, we need to have that communicated to us. So we're figuring this out now. We're trying, even if it's just sort of an email to myself or to Dorota, and then we'll need to get some other people involved, or whether we can roll that into the software that we're working on to roll out for licensing next year. We're still kind of up in the air in this, but we'll figure that out with you guys as we move along. And Dorota and I we like to keep a relationship, obviously, with the Cooperating Hemp Laboratory, so we can work together on some of these issues and figure out how we're going to do this and what makes the most sense for laboratories. And then, of course, to pay a non-refundable application fee. There will be a non-refundable application fee for everybody next year, be it grower or handler, and it'll be $750. Our licenses expire December 31st of the year and will be annually renewed. All key personnel with direct or indirect financial interest with the laboratory must be identified as part of the licensing process. So that could be the laboratory manager, it could be CEO, COO, CSO, CFO, those types of individuals. Laboratory is going to have to make some decisions on who has that direct or indirect financial interest, because all key personnel will need to submit to a federal background check at the laboratory's expense. And then the application process for 2021 will open November 2020. We're currently finalizing or putting the last sort of finishing touches, hopefully, on the software that we've been working with a vendor for close to a year now, trying to get this easy and user-friendly. There will be a public portal where laboratories and growers, handlers can log into, and they can manage their applications and their fields. It should be pretty slick. It should be pretty seamless. I'm hoping that once people log in, they realize how kind of easy it is. There'll be some upload capacity with it, and we'll kind of get into that a little later, because C of A's or any information from the laboratory to the grower will need to be communicated to the Office of Indiana State Chemist. And then, of course, the laboratory operated by the Indiana State Police for purposes of hemp or marijuana analysis is exempt from this requirement. So the State Police Lab, they get to do fun stuff too. So becoming a cooperating hemp laboratory, first, as I mentioned, we have a questionnaire. Anybody who would like to request it, I'll send it out to the key personnel or one person to forward on to finish. And has to be submitted with the laboratory manager's name. And the questionnaire assesses quality management systems, DEA registration, any third-party accreditations, and then instrumentation and methodology. It's about, I think, a 5-page questionnaire, if I remember correctly, on all of those items. And a lot of it, the majority of it is based on the ISO standard. So if you read it, you realize it kind of reads the same way, but we're trying to make sure, since it's not an absolute requirement right now to be ISO certified, that some of those same things are being captured within the laboratory. And then afterwards, of course, we would set up a meeting then to speak with whomever and answer questions. We require cooperating hemp laboratories to run samples with instrumentation and methods that are equivalent to ours. We would ask that you review our methods. We don't say you have to run our methods or implement them straight into your laboratory. Obviously, there's always going to be exceptions on columns that you choose or consumables that you do, or we'll have different vendors of instrumentation. Those things, so long as they're equivalent, are obviously going to be accepted. And Dorota will get into a lot of the nuts and bolts of how this works and our methods, because we have both GC and LC. And of course, any of our methods or our SOPs on our hemp program and how we manage the hemp program, how we track samples, our controlled substance SOP, any of that is available to any laboratory who would like to see it, and we can provide those to you. Just let us know and we'll send them your way. As I mentioned, we can set up a virtual meeting, and then we do want to see all third-party accreditation. So your scope of accreditation, if you're ISO certified or any other third-party accreditation that would offer you a certificate or a scope, provide that to us, and that's included in the questionnaire. We'll want to see your SOPs and your methods and how you're going to make your determinations. And then, of course, measurement of uncertainty determinations. And again, Dorota is going to go into measurement of uncertainty and how we calculated it and some of the things to consider when you're calculating measurement of uncertainty. And all of that information we would like to see to make some decisions. So I just wanted to, because we get this question a lot, for those labs who are looking to do more than percent THC testing, and they're wondering what exactly it is we do versus what they would be able to provide. So OISC's regulatory authority is percent THC on hemp plants on a dry weight basis. That is what we do. That is what we give back to the grower. And then we do not test any product of any kind. We're just doing plant material. OISC only provides the percent THC on reports, does not include any other cannabinoids, mycotoxins, heavy metals, pesticide residues, or microbials. This is a question we get a lot lately too about microbials and what it does and methods out there. But for now, at this point in time, October 26, 2020, OISC only provides the percent THC testing. That isn't to say we don't have the in-house expertise to do a lot of these other things. It's just that to the grower, we do not provide that, as it's not a regulatory authority. We are not a fee-for-service laboratory. So our money doesn't come from the grower. It doesn't come from industry for us to do the testing. It's a function of our authority. So any grower with a crop found above the OISC THC potency testing acceptance criteria, which includes our measurement of uncertainty, will be issued a crop destruct letter. And then the acceptance criteria, as I mentioned, includes the measurement of uncertainty for both our GC and our LC method. Proficiency testing is strongly encouraged for any laboratory wanting to become a cooperating hemp laboratory, and any PT results must be shared with OISC. And again, Dorota will go into how she does the PT program, and where the PT program is, and how we participate in it, and how we can then use those results to obviously make us better and include in our measurement of uncertainty. So, the 2020 is going to be a little different for us and for the state of Indiana and what it is that we'll be doing. We are currently in the process of training certified crop advisors that will be sampling all varieties of hemp in Indiana at the grower's expense. And then these CCAs that are being trained by OISC, they'll use our sampling SOP that was approved as part of our the state plan. All of our SOPs and methods were included with our state plan and approved as a part of it. Samples from the CCAs will be sent to commercial laboratory testing, will be done at the grower's expense. And then CCAs will check with OISC website and the USD laboratory website for potential laboratories to send it to. So this is another reason we're really hoping to build this relationship with cooperating laboratories within the state of Indiana. So CCAs have this opportunity to send samples to these laboratories, so we can get results that are the most beneficial to growers. I've included the website there for the USDA, and that just for Indiana, you can search by state. The USDA, all it does currently right now is list DEA certified laboratories that they put a disclaimer on their website that they're not making any sort of approvals or recognition. It's just for information purposes only, but you can check all states, including Indiana. And then laboratories will provide a certificate of analysis to the grower, including the percent THC and then any other test results that they would be requesting. Growers are always encouraged to provide samples to laboratories to check THC, particularly when getting close to harvest. There's a time frame in which growers have to harvest by, and so they're going to want to know where the best time is to harvest. We've been looking at variety since we kind of started this program, and really the last 2-3 years. And so even I think on our website you can go to, and I think Marguerite has this information as well, as to what it is that we've seen in terms of variety and percent THC. But it's a plant. It's sometimes tough to really say, okay, now's the cutoff date, and not know. Nobody has a crystal ball. You can't look into it and say by tomorrow it's going to be here or at 1% or 0.3%. So we just encourage growers to check regularly with laboratories as well, so they know where they are in the process and where their plants are in the process. And growers hopefully will be checking the OISC website to see laboratories, or the USDA website to see where to send their samples to. I'm sure there's a lot of laboratories out there who are receiving samples. And then the OISC inspection staff, those feed, fertilizer, and seed and hemp inspectors, will be doing surveillance sampling of hemp fields and providing samples to the OISC laboratory for testing next year. But once we get testing results back, our results are final as the regulatory authority. So if a grower has a certificate of analysis from a laboratory, and then a week later, say we have sampling and testing that we've done, and the certificate of analysis says it's in compliance, and we find that it's out of compliance, our results are the final results, and we'll issue a crop destruct. And unfortunately, that's happened a few times. But again, time and weather all kind of impact and affect what that test result is going to be. This has a lot of information on it, and as I'm looking on the screen, it is super dinky, but I just wanted to provide, I won't cover all of it, but I wanted to provide to laboratories who are unfamiliar with ISO 17025 or kind of new to the idea of reporting requirements. This is the list of common requirements for reports. So the C of A that would be issued to a grower would need to have all of these different types of information on it to be a compliant report with the ISO 17025. We are not able, the ISO 17025 2017 standards are out there. You can buy them. I can provide a link to anybody who might want it to go out and purchase them. Unfortunately, we can't share them because it's copyrighted material, but I just did want to share this with you, just kind of show the amount of information that is going to be needed on these certificates of analysis in order to comply with 17025 standards. We also have a responsibility for reporting to USDA, and I just wanted to touch on these reporting requirements so you can kind of get an idea of what it is we'll be asking and why we need growers to have the C of A's in their hand so that they can upload their information as soon as possible. We are needing to report to USDA on the first of the month a hemp producer report with new producers and changes to existing producers with the background information. We need to report on the first day of the month the disposal report, including total acreage of plant material, including those that are above the acceptable THC level. And then on December 15th of the year, we have an annual report that will be required to submit, including total acres planted, total disposed acres, and total acres harvested. And then the testing results report. If to me, USDA made this a little ambiguous or a little tough to figure out. The report needs to be submitted not more than 30 days after the date on which the information was received. So whether we send a report every 29 days to make sure that we're within a 30-day window, we'll at least probably be reporting this monthly. And it needs to include all samples tested, compliant and non-compliant results, with license number, name, business address, and DEA registration of the laboratory, as well as a sample identification number, and then the date of the test report and identification of tests, retests with results, if any retests were done. So this is the information that will be coming from laboratories to the growers, and then the growers will have to be inputting into the software that we have, and sometimes it'll be an upload of some sort, and then we'll have to comb through and mine that data to see, to then submit to USDA. I did want to touch on remediation. It comes up every now and then, questions on remediation, and I can absolutely understand why this question is coming out of the laboratory because it seems pretty reasonable. But THC extraction to make a product or plant biomass below the 0.3% THC is currently illegal. So if a lab is found to be doing this sort of THC remediation, it will result in a license revocation from OISC. Right now, DEA is saying a reverse distributor registration is needed in order to do any of this type of activity, and DEA has stated that they are not approving reverse distributors at this point. So they're taking kind of a strong stance on this. So laboratories shouldn't be doing this. OISC has contacted the Attorney General office for their opinion, but we're in the middle of conversations on what it would look like. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that at this point, it's an illegal activity. And I think that is it for me for the first part. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. We'll move straight into Dorota. It's 1:44.
Okay.
So Dorota, thanks.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Dorota Inerovich. Kerry already introduced me, so I think we can move forward to the next few slides. So in the next few slides, I would like to provide some information about the way how we are testing raw hemp materials in our lab. So we received sample from the inspector. They brought sample to the laboratories. Well, of course, we have to put all sample numbers in a LIMS number and capture everything, and then we are ready to start drying. And we do initial drying in an oven using 60-65 Celsius degree for 18-24 hours. In the past, we used lower temperature, 30 degree, but it took significantly longer time, minimum 5 days. That's why we try to shorten the analysis time, so we switch to the drying in the oven. And after this step, we do grinding. We are using cutting mill, magic bullet, if this is small sample, but all other grinding are also suitable. After grinding, its important step is sieve sample through 1.5 millimeter size screen. That helps to homogenize sample. It will really significantly improve homogenization. The next step will be checking moisture, right? And there are a few methods available. The best probably will be Carr-Fisher method, but laboratories also use loss of drying, moisture analyzer, and other. At the same time, when we check the moisture, we take subsample for analysis. So we are ready now for the extraction. So please, next slide. Okay, so what analytical method we use? We developed this method in our laboratories. We use as a base Colorado method. We use methanol as extraction solvent, and we do shaking using the Gino grinder. It's very intensive shaking using this instrument. I also would like to add that there are official OISC method for cannabinoids analysis. For those who are not familiar with OISC, actually it's OISC International. This is Association of Official Analytical Chemists. They are oriented for the food, drug, agriculture, environment method. I provided the titles of 2 methods so you can recognize that both are LC methods. And those methods, if you are interested and you are not the member of OISC, you can purchase. So, and I want to emphasize that we calculate THC level on dry basis. Kerry already mentioned this, but this is required by law, so we have to do this in our apply this in our calculation. Also, the other important thing is a necessity of determining method of uncertainty. And I provide, this is actually required by USDA, and I provide the website, the address to the website of USDA. They provide guidance how to calculate, very general information, how to calculate, because they want us to use expanded measurement of uncertainty. Okay, next slide. And so which technique we are using? Like Kerry mentioned, we use gas chromatography. Is this our kind of screening method? We are using Agilent 7890B system, GC system, but any other can be used. It doesn't have to be this one. As an example, I provided what columns can be used from Agilent. Most popular, I think, are from Agilent, but Restec as well, or other vendors. We do determine the THC, CBD, CBN by GC, but we only report THC for the regulatory purpose, right? And what's the next step? If the THC, if the percent THC in the tested sample is above the allowed limit, the sample is retested by liquid chromatography. So next slide, please. So what we did in the past, HPLC, now we switch to UPLC. And this is kind of our confirmation method. We are using instrument HPLC from Waters, but any other which can be applied, any equivalent instrument can be applied, right? And again, as an example, is a variety of columns is available. As an example, I provide this, which we tested in our study. Actually, currently we are using Waters Cortex UPLC shield column, but you can use any other. Determination. So what we determine by LC method. So we have THC, THCA, CBD, CBDA, and CBN. We calculate total percent of THC according to this formula, which you are all familiar. And again, I emphasize report on dry basis. And I want to add here, GC or LC technique is sufficient for determining the total THC, right? For determination of acidic forms of cannabinoids, HPLC of UPLC should be applied. And I know that a lot of companies are doing this. What does it mean? I show you two methods. It's not necessary, absolutely, you don't have to use two. Any of them is sufficient to provide this information we needed. So don't be confused because we are using two methods that you have to go the same way. No, if you have one, that's enough. Just if you can prove that your method is evaluated and it's provide good results, that's enough. So next slide, please. And Kerry already, hello?
And you may have addressed this. I'm having some audio problems, but we have a question here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Are you finding results using GC to be lower than LC?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Let me answer this. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I would say most cases, yes, GC are slightly lower than LC, but I've seen the sample where LC give us a slightly lower, but as a general, LC give you slightly higher results. It's like a pattern. No, yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, is anything else about this LC and GC method. And I want to add that before our study, we check our GC, because sometimes you may have a problem that not entire THCA is converted in THC in your GC detector. So we did some checking before we applied this method, and we checked that conversion was more than 92, was in a range 90-95%. So that we were getting pretty good results. But I know that some laboratories mention this, that sometimes they are not getting a right conversion in a detector. So I don't know if I answer this question, but if anything additional, please let me know. So I want to add about the proficiency testing program. Kerry already mentioned this, but I would strongly recommend, and I provide, I believe most of you are familiar with this, but just to be sure that you know where to look for, I provide the website for their program, and also some of them know, I know that you can buy actually material from them and you can use as a quality reference material. So how this program works, they send you in the fall, they send you 2 samples in September, 2 samples in November, and you're supposed to test this 3 times on different days, and you send the data, and they calculate, they do statistical calculation, precision, trueness, based on all data received from all laboratories, and they publish this on their website. Of course, they are not indicate which lab, which data belongs to each lab. Everything is anonymously. So, but this is really helpful for your lab. At least I had such a that when we check where we are, right, how we are doing comparing to the other laboratories, where is our method, right? Are we close to average? So I would strongly recommend to participate in this program. So thank you so much. If you have more questions, I will be gladly to answer.
We've also provided our contact information for anybody else who might want to contact us later as part of the slides. Otherwise, if there are any questions.
Carrie,
yeah.
we've got, it says the measurement of uncertainty talks about 0.1%. And is that compared to the total THC 0.3%? It was explained to this person that it was a total 0.2 variance, which seems to be a huge swing.
Yes,
because chat, if you want to get that.
No, this is something what we spend sometimes, because how to calculate. That's why I provide this information about the measurement uncertainty in the guidance of USDA, because this is expanded uncertainty. It means you are using coverage factor which it's equal to, right? So you multiply by 2 everything to cover 95% confidence level. So, and what they ask you're supposed to use uncertainty due to repeatability, due to reproducibility, and due to accuracy. That's why participating in the PT program gives you the way of calculate the uncertainty due to accuracy. Yeah, I was strong. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this guidance. There is many ways of calculate, but we try to follow this what USDA require. That's why measurement of uncertainty is pretty high, right? Because if you use just due to repeatability based on single laboratory, that will be much, much lower, right? But the other parts of the equation, that they will increase. And we have slightly different measurement of uncertainty for GC method and for LC method, because how those methods perform when we compare with the results from PT program. That's the difference came from.
Yeah, I see that Dan said 0.399 of THC is considered to be 0.3%. And again, when we did our measurement of uncertainty, it sort of depends on how that falls in with your measurement of uncertainty before, making sort of that caveat blank statement. But it correct in that, it says 0.3%, but really it's all about how the determination of your measurement of uncertainty on where your acceptance criteria is.
Yeah, that is really important because that determines your acceptance criteria, right? And I didn't provide any information, like detailed information about our method, because everything is in our SOP, and as Carrie said, and you don't need to follow exactly this method. You can do according to your method if you prove that it's okay.
Right. And so, Doug, to your question, do you see any in-field testing capabilities being developed? Is the question about becoming a cooperative hemp laboratory, or whether that capability is out there already? From my understanding, there are those companies that have sort of that in-field testing capability that's out there, but in becoming a cooperative hemp laboratory, we haven't really made the assessment of how, whether we're comparing apples to apples or whether we're comparing apples to oranges. And it was Dorota and I had been talking this year, early in the year, about doing a side-by-side study with one of those facilities that had that in-field or a different sort of instrumentation and testing capability that we do. And of course, we were not able to do that because of COVID. And, a lot of laboratories stayed open during COVID. Our laboratories completely shut down. Nobody was allowed into the laboratories there for a couple of months. And then we're kind of been working through the backlog. So it's our hope that we can enter in some of those side-by-side studies so we can see how we compare, so we can make better determinations in the future on those cooperating hemp laboratories and maybe bringing them into the process as well. So I hope that answered your question, Doug.
Okay. Well, thanks to all of you. Carrie and Dorota, thank you very much for your time and always being available to all of us to answer questions. Much appreciated.
Sure.
And
yeah. Thanks.
You have supported, so I'll pass this along.
Okay. Great. Yeah. Thank you, Jamie, for setting this up. I really appreciate the conversation.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, everybody, take care.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.